Welcome. Welcome again to Nature-Based Winters, indoors and out in family childcare. Okay, people, it is November, which means that winter is near, and you may have mixed feelings about the upcoming season. And we would hope but that by the end of our time together tonight, you will feel inspired and prepared, have some ideas for continuing nature-based programming throughout the cold, snowy season that we have in Wisconsin. My name is Grace Eilers. I am the Family Child Care Content Specialist with Satellite Family Child Care System. You can see my name listed. We also have another facilitator, Laura Simpkin, who is Satellite's Associate Director. I will let her say hello before I get to our contributors.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Simpkin, Associate Director of Satellite. I am really excited to talk about outdoor time with children. It's one of my favorite things to do. So welcome, and I look forward to getting into this.
Thanks, Laura. And I just checked to see we do have Alexis Koonce here live with us today. So, Alexis, at all throughout the event, if you want to add in, you are one of our contributors. I interviewed Alexis at the Wisconsin Family Child Care Conference last May about this topic. So, Alexis, if you are there, please share elaborate, if you are able and willing, on some of the topics and the answers that you gave. I'm excited to have you here live. So thank you for joining us. Another contributor that helped add content to our discussion tonight, Valerie Johnson, who is the program owner of Tiny Treasures Family Child Care. So Alexis Koonce, Next Up Learning Academy, and Valerie Johnson, Tiny Treasures Family Child Care, are both educators working in the field, and they have contributed to tonight's event, which is exciting because both of these educators are coming from different types of outdoor spaces. So Alexis is in more of an urban environment, and Valerie is in more of a rural area. So we are going to hear both of those perspectives tonight. So these are the questions that we will hopefully be answering. It is our goal to answer these by the end of tonight. So the first one being, why incorporate nature in winter? And that will be incorporated, that'll be a theme throughout as we're talking about supporting children outdoors in winter. So how do you implement those strategies to support children outdoors, which includes just getting them outside to begin with? And then how can you bring nature indoors? How can you incorporate nature-based learning opportunities throughout the indoor environment? So we'll start talking about how to support children outdoors, and then talk about bringing it indoors for when either it's not safe to go outside, whatever the case may be. So we're going to focus on both of those components tonight. There's a question on the slide here, and I thought it would be a good way to start off our time together is just really reflect, think inward. When you look at these images, how do you feel? What feelings come up for you when you look at these images of snowy weather? And snowy weather, snow on the ground. How do you feel? Please answer in the chat. Stephanie says cozy, freshness, briskness. Nancy says it's beautiful. Want to go walk in it. Oh, wow. We have a lot of chat participation. I have to scroll up to get to the top ones. This is great. Shonda says it feels calm and cozy. Love the snow for playtime. Laura says it just makes me smile. So pretty. Good. Excited. This is what I was waiting for. Jennifer Cribbins is not ready for it with a smiley face. Knew there would be some. Jasmine says, it's beautiful, stay indoors. Kim says, peaceful. Another participant said, want to jump in. Cold and caution, says Wendy. There are so many. Bundle up and go, sledding. I feel excited. Love snow. That's what Brianna says. So this is great. We have a group that clearly loves winter, is excited about the snow, but also some of you might have more mixed feelings about it, and that's okay. Maybe you tend to want to stay more inside and just admire it from indoors. And that's good to keep in mind your own personal feelings about winter because how you approach outdoor winter play as an individual yourself, as an adult, is going to influence how your children view it and ultimately engage in outdoor play in the winter in our cold, beautiful state of Wisconsin. So, like I mentioned before, we are going to start by talking about how to support your mixed age group outdoors in winter. So we're going to be talking about, yes, infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, supporting them, how you support each of those age groups and hold all of them in mind and get them out the door inside. So we're going to talk about some of those challenges, brainstorm some solutions for you to just getting outside more. And we're going to start with just acknowledging the importance of being outdoors in or near nature. So having that access to fresh air, sunlight, and that hands-on big body play. So how does it support children's development? Well, the first one, and this just surrounds children, is that being outdoors helps regulate mood, which is ultimately going to support children's capacity to do things like take risks and solve problems, and ultimately just focus on play and discovery. And through this, you're going to support all of the areas of development. We're going to highlight a few of these today. The first very obvious one is going to be that children's physical development through just being outdoors, practicing those large motor skills like running and climbing and pushing and pulling and throwing and, XYZ. And you might say, well, we can do that inside. I have a large enough space. But there's something really unique about being outside because that exposure to sunlight, even in the winter, supports children's healthy bone development by giving them a natural source of vitamin D. And vitamin D is an essential nutrient. Children need vitamin D when they're growing to build those strong, healthy bones. So it's that unique combination of being outside, jumping and running, and also getting that natural source of vitamin D from the sunlight. It also supports children's sensory attunement. So their brains are tasked with processing so much information coming from all the senses when they're outside. And that's not just your classic five, your taste, your touch, your smell, your sight, and your hearing. It's not just those, it's also your vestibular system, which is your balance and movement, because as we know, the outdoors, you don't have a lot of even surfaces to walk on sometimes. So it's supporting that. It is supporting your proprioceptive system, which is where your body is in space when you engage in that big body movement outdoors. And a big one, especially in winter, it's supporting that interoception system, which is your body's ability, your ability to sense those internal processes happening in your body. So that includes feeling like you're hot or too cold. So all of those things are wrapped up when you get children outside, supporting their development in those ways. It also supports children's emotional development and helps build resiliency because children are tasked with taking those manageable risks outdoors and experiencing discomfort when being cold, being wet, experiencing weather, and persisting with the help of a supportive adult and with strategies that we are going to talk about momentarily. And finally, just pulling out a few pieces to highlight in terms of benefiting children's development, there is evidence to support that experiences in nature, outdoors in or near nature, actually supports children's attention and concentration skills. So their ability to focus on a task. So if that list seemed incomplete, it is. There are many, many additional benefits of just spending time outdoors that actually benefit everyone, including you as the educator. And the first that we're going to talk about is the mental health benefits. So being outdoors, it's reducing that stress hormones in your body, those stress hormones in your body, and therefore it's helping regulate your mood. So, just you as an individual and your children, you're just going to feel emotionally better after spending time outdoors. There is something unique about the fresh air and the sunlight that you see these benefits come through. It also supports everyone's physical health by doing things like improving sleep, lowering blood pressure, actually find a correlative benefit of reducing risk of chronic disease. People who spend at least 120 minutes outdoors in or near nature, doesn't matter the type of exercise level you're engaged in, you're going to see these benefits. There's just something unique about being outdoors. And there's also evidence to support that individuals who spend more time in nature, outdoors, in or near nature, have a more robust immune system and healthier microbiomes. So this would be the bacteria, the healthy bacteria that live, say, in your gut that help you digest food, and also your skin microbiome. So the healthy bacteria and fungus and all of those lovely microorganisms that help keep our skin healthy and strong. It's going to help improve that as well, just being outside, outdoors. Now, with that being said, it is unarguable that it is harder to get outdoors, spend time outdoors in a mixed age childcare program, such as family childcare, when it is cold, when it is snowy, and when there is not as much sunlight throughout the day. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about how you can help support each of these age groups, the infants, the toddlers, the preschoolers, and then we're going to discuss some of those strategies too. And I would encourage all of you who are coming here with a perspective, with experience, with tips and tricks that work for you as we go through each of these age groups. Please, if we are missing something, add it to the chat, share your perspective, because that's how we're all going to learn from each other. Infants. Getting infants outside in winter, some would argue this is the most challenging age group to get outside. It's all going to be about supporting their sensory exploration in a manageable way. So when you think about your outdoor space in winter, do you have infant safe spaces where infants can move freely? If the snow is too high, you might need to recruit those older children to help shovel out an area for the babies to be safe and to still engage with the snow in a safe way. Using blankets and layers to support infants' internal temperature so that it doesn't become dangerous or overwhelming for them. And you're going to need to stay very close by because you're going to have to monitor their signs of distress. You might have to massage their fingers and their toes to get that blood flow going. And you're going to have to stay close to offer that emotional support, picking up the child when they're just feeling distressed, to offer that emotional support for them, to warm them up. Um, Another technique that I love to think about is in terms of infants and even young toddlers and even preschoolers is looking at your outdoor space and considering an area where maybe you could offer children shelter from, say, wind or snow, or even sleet or rain if you're outdoors in weather and they need a break from it. Is there a space where you can make, say, like a makeshift shelter for children to go escape to when they need a break from the elements? And infants could be one of those. I've seen educators use waterproof tarps to just create that makeshift shelter for children and to help buffer from the elements. I also think looking at these images about the infants in the middle here at Linda's program, just their view of the sky and thinking about the difference between, an infant who isn't yet sitting up, their view when they're laying outdoors versus their view when laying indoors. Might be a lot more going on out there. Probably is a lot more going outside. When was the last time you just looked up at the sky, laid on your back and looked up at the sky? It's a pretty awe-inspiring experience, I'm sure, for an infant.
So Grace, I'd like to add another area to think about when we have a mixed age group and we're outside. Just because one of my experiences with um, bringing that mixed age group outside with infants in the middle of winter is a different type of socialization sometimes occurs when the older children are exploring and really excited and in awe of like the snow or any of the things that are just really different in the winter, and then interact with the infants to bring those things to them. Um, there's a different type of interaction that sometimes takes place because of just um, I guess, the curiosity of your older children and how they share that with your infants as well.
Thank you, Laura. And it sounds like it benefits everyone.
Absolutely.
Now we are going to hear from Valerie, and I asked Valerie this question: what feels challenging in winter? And this was her response.
As we know, as we're in Wisconsin, it's one day it could be beautiful and the next day it could be snowing. But bringing, if it's too cold with the little ones, it's a challenge. Bringing the snow inside, having the kids actually collect and play with the snow when it's wintertime. Another thing, going outside, I have a sled well, several sleds that the kids use, and I actually, this past year, from another provider with networking, she had talked about how she uses a children's wading pool, and she puts her infants in there in their snowsuits so that they can sit up and they can watch the clouds and they can see but not be in the direct snow. So going outside sometimes is a challenge. As we always say, when you have 8 of them, it takes you almost longer to get everybody dressed, and then you are outside. But having the older ones help get everything on, and when we're outside, just letting them do what they want to do, talking about differences in the snow that they see, how it's dirty, how it's what do you think happened here? Why do you think there's ice here and not there? So just being to go outside is very important for kids' mental health and my health. So just getting outside, even if it's for 5 minutes to stand in the sun. I've had kids where right outside my center, they're old enough where I can just let them go out in the snow and they're right there where I can see them while I'm getting the little ones ready too.
Valerie touched on a really big challenge that I I would be surprised if not many of you are coming here thinking about it just takes so long. It can be overwhelming. All of the snow gear, all of the winter gear that you need to get on, assist and help supervise, 6 to 8 children all getting on their winter gear. It can feel very overwhelming. So we're going to talk about those components in a little bit. But I also love how Valerie said, just getting out for 5 minutes, just to feel the sun in your face. She talked about those mental health benefits too. So toddlers, they're going to be very focused on whole body movement when they're outside and when they're outside in any weather, but particularly in winter, because as many of you know, if you work with toddlers, um, it is very hard to move in all of that snow gear that they have on, all of their winter gear. So they're going to be mainly focused. And I would encourage to promote that focus on that big whole body movement. So, do you have large blocks? Do you have big shovels for children to use? Do you have sleds for pulling and pushing? And do you have activities or games that support children's engagement? So, things like let's go lay and make a snow angel, let's build a fort together, and the younger the child, the more support they're going to need from adults when they're outside in winter. So you may have to frame that big body play through things like games and directives. Hey, I need help shoveling a path, or I need help finding this. And that can help engage toddlers in that whole body movement because let's be honest, it can be challenging when you have those big mittens on as a toddler, and we want to get them excited about being outside, getting them doing things that are challenging but they can still accomplish. So that focus on whole body movement would be a good way to direct their play. And they're going to do it naturally anyway. They probably won't need a directive, these toddlers. They're going to go outside and they're going to want to do what toddlers do and run and jump. But just to keep your brain thinking about that when you're outside with toddlers is that focus on that whole body movement. Another thing too that I've seen, think about your terrain. Do you have uneven surfaces? Could you shovel snow into a big mound in the middle of your outdoor space to challenge toddlers, or excite them? And finally, teaching that winter safety. Oh, a big breath there for that one. Your mittens live on your hands, your hat lives on your head. Um, as Valerie was talking about before, recruiting the older children. You could even have a program job of winter safety helper to assist. You could say, hey, could you please go and help remind so and so to put their mittens on? And to help remind the younger children. And if you are cold, if a child is coming to you and saying, I'm cold, or they look cold, teaching children to move their bodies. It's instinctual, I think, for many of us when we're cold to just curl up in a ball and not move. It's important to let children know your winter gear is not making you warm. It's trapping your body's heat. So get moving, keep moving if you're cold, move those fingers and toes, and that's going to help children stay outside longer and feel more comfortable. And the obvious winter safety ones would be, notice and point out those slippery surfaces, make sure you're preventing those hazards of icy surfaces that children could fall on. And finally, I wanted to talk about this when we talked about toddlers is, do you have your own snow pants? Do you have winter gear on to help model for the toddlers? I was very reluctant to go out and buy snow pants as an adult. Very reluctant. Valentina says always. I'm not surprised, Valentina. I see more chat messages coming in. Several pairs, yeah. Um, I was very reluctant as an adult. I didn't want to get snow pants. I thought I am a grown up. I don't need snow pants. And then I did. And the change in children's play when the grown up in the group has snow pants and is able to just be outside sitting in the snow, it was pretty remarkable. So if this isn't something that you already have, I would really encourage you to think about just getting a pair and trying it out because one, you are going to be a lot warmer. Snow pants help really keep your body heat trapped in. And two, you're going to be able to get down on the child's level when they're outside and just really help enhance their play and keep them engaged.
So Grace, I want to second that, and I see lots of people are seconding that in the
Yes.
chat. It really does make a difference. I didn't buy snow pants to go outside with children until about 5 years ago. And so my first like 28 years were without them. And the last 5 were, and it really it allowed me to roll on the ground more and to engage more. And one of the things that I love taking toddlers outside in the winter. And I know for me, it's not taking infants out that's the most challenging. It's actually taking the toddlers out because as you're putting on their gloves, they're taking off their boots. And then as you're putting on their boots, they're taking off their gloves. And then their hat gets flung off while you're walking outside. And so there's this huge learning curve about putting on all this stuff that's really hard to move around in. And then trying to get outside and move in it, right? And so one of the things that I love is at the beginning of the winter, you're right there in with them, showing them what their bodies can do while they're all wrapped up. And that by the end of the winter, if you keep going outside every day that you can, they're doing it on their own. And while the beginning can be really hard for some kids because again, keeping those things on is really hard. By the end, most of them have decided that it's okay. And I would say, what Valerie was saying about if it's only for 5 minutes, it's okay. Maybe the first couple times it's for 5 minutes, but it's because they haven't acclimated yet. By the end of the winter, if you keep on going, it's 45 minutes or it's an hour or whatever, your schedule allows. Because almost all the children they'll get used to it and they'll start to engage at a much deeper level. And then you're not trying to lead the play, but they're doing it on their own.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
And they might need some help because I can only imagine. I don't remember my first experience with snow, but I can only imagine the all the mixed feelings that come with, okay, now it's really cold and I'm wet and I'm wrapped up and I can barely move. And I just learned how to walk not too long ago. So there's that too. Just a lot going on. So sometimes, like Laura said, you might have to work up to spending long time outdoors. You might need to help frame them, give them frame the play, give them ideas. Because it's hard to move around when you're all wrapped up in lots of great warm winter gear. I see more chat messages coming through. So thank you. For those who don't have the chat pulled up, we have some great messages coming through. And I would again encourage you, if you want to react, have those side conversations, please do. Here is a video of a family child care educator who she just put up a video of her spending time outside with the children in her program. And it's nice to see it. So we're just going to watch it and we'll talk about it.
These sides here, Lily, we put these sides down, 1 and 2, and then Lily will open it because it's Lily's turn. Go ahead, Lily. Oh, Lily, look at that.
You can see the mittens half on,
And then the other one down. Then
and
you
they're
open
still
it.
out there.
Gentle, gentle. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Let's get the other side, Mabel. You're doing so good. Let me just help you with the other side. I'll put it down. Now you can open it, sweetie. No, no, no. Don't, no. Just move, put it apart like this. Yeah. Wow, look at your snowman, Mabel.
I
It's
just
gorgeous.
made it like you.
You sure did. Uh-huh, you sure did.
Papa, please.
My jackets dry better when I hang them, so I hang these in my laundry room. So, you know, I just put them on the hanger, and then I take them to my laundry room, and that's where I hang them.
Thought that video was just a good example of just real life and how snow is messy. You're going to have children who are just persevering. They have mittens half on and they're still trying to create a snowman with the mold that this educator had put out in the environment. And they're just keep working at it. And you can tell that these children have spent a lot of time outdoors and they have worked up to being able to say like, all right, I need to take a break. I'm just going to sit here on the stairs, take a break for a little bit, and then keep working at it. But it's messy. It's messy. It's wet. It's cold. And these are all great experiences for children. So, like I said before, you may be coming here today. Well, it just takes so long to get outside. Like, I'm fine being outside. Just get me out there. And we're just going to talk about a couple of potential solutions for this. So think about that time before you get outside. Are you setting those routines for children? I would love to hear if you have great routines, tips, or tricks that work well for you in your program. Please add those to the chat for others to see and look through. I'm going to offer a couple here today, and I'm sure Laura may have some more to add on to that after I have finished. But a big one are visuals. Visuals are your friend. So this would be, say, you can see here on the slide. I know it's a little small, but it is a very simple sequencing card showing children in order how to get their snow gear on. Because as all of you know, you can't put your boots on before you get your snow pants on. It's just life doesn't work like that. You can't put your coat on necessarily, depends on how you put the coat and the snow pants on before you get the snow pants on. So having that in a sequence form for children, helping them, pointing at it and using it when they need assistance, when you're just starting off using these visuals, can be a great way to do so, to help them to gain that independence. And you can make your own. There are great ones online. The best would be the sequencing visual that you see on the right, of the child themselves, a personalized visual of each child getting on their winter gear. And this is something that you can even recruit your families to help with. And then they can have one at home and one at your program. So I have seen visuals work very well with very young toddlers all the way up to preschoolers. And then on top of that, you'll see I have songs on here. So songs are really, really helpful to cement those sequences, how we get our winter gear on into the brains of young children. And so I want to pause and ask if anyone has a song that they would love to share, either through chat or if you have one that you'd love to sing for all of us too.
I'll share that. So I always sing my way through the day, but half the time I make up the songs. So I might actually just sing, the order of things. And I'm not going to sing for any of you because I'm tone deaf and children don't care, but you all will. But actually just singing my way through the routine seems to take a lot of the tension out of it, if it's a harder day getting ready.
Thanks, Laura. I'm sure you have a beautiful voice.
No, I don't. Um, if that's okay. So I see some other suggestions in the chat as well around this. I'm gonna add a suggestion while you're adding you're all adding your own into the chat. Um, there are some children who we know are going to take a really long time and some who are not. And you don't always have to do it all together, right? Like you can start with the children who are going to take a much longer time and then move on to the children who are going to be able to independently get themselves ready or more independently, just so that they don't have to wait for quite as long. So that's just a simple suggestion for your mixed age group or your mixed ability group.
Thanks, Laura.
Sure.
It looks like Debbie agrees. Learn quickly that the kids that get dressed fast get hot. Have them get dressed last.
Yeah. Another suggestion, and this is, I've done visual aids for a long time. And sometimes it helps also if you just parse it out one piece at a time. So depending on the size of your group, sometimes you could say, okay, first, everybody's getting on snow pants, so that you don't end up with half the kids wearing their boots and not having their snow pants on first. So sometimes that's another suggestion or another thing you can try. That can help with efficiency. Definitely the coat flipping thing. I see a few people talking about that in the chat. Super helpful.
I'll sing my song. Nobody asked, but I'll sing it, I guess, because I just want you to all have this in your head for the rest of the day, I guess. I'm sorry, disclaimer. I'm not responsible for that if it gets stuck in your head. But a fun one that I love that is very simple and very young toddlers will begin singing this. And then it can be really helpful to add that visual with it. And I've seen children sing the song and find their place when they are dressing themselves independently. Is snow pants, boots, jacket, hat, jacket, hat. Snow pants, boots, jacket, hat, and don't forget your gloves and friend. Snow pants, boots, jacket, hat, jacket, hat. So that is the one that I have used, and it has worked very well for young children. And that last one, I added friend. When I was singing it, it would be backpack instead because typically we would end the day outside. So that last word can use it and change it and adapt it to your own program. But my thinking was with that one is that you could even try, depending on your mixed age group, is pairing children together, an older child with a younger child too, and it might take longer. But you could just see what works best for your group. If you have some that are really skilled at getting gear on, you could recruit them to help the younger ones.
So, and Grace, before we move on, I see a concern that was brought up in the chat that I think we probably have a lot of folks on this call with some good suggestions, which is, this is an interesting idea, taking children outside in the winter, but some parents don't bring the right clothes. And I know that there are a lot of different ways that folks have figured out how to run their program so that you can get outside when parents don't either have access to warm winter clothes or forget them or for some other reason don't bring them. And so I'm wondering if we could pause just for a minute for some ideas to help Clara out a little bit and anybody else who has that issue, because again, it's very, very common.
Thank you, Laura.
Sure.
Any suggestions for Clara? And for all of you who are joining today who struggle with this, who maybe have families who don't know the benefit of getting outdoors, maybe they didn't spend a lot of time outdoors as a child themselves, or may be under-resourced and don't have access to winter gear. They have other priorities that go before bringing winter gear. So whatever the reason. Brianna says, I have asked parents if they have any extra gear their kiddos either have grown out of or don't need anymore. That is a great suggestion. So asking for donations for gear that children have grown out of to, and then have a stockpile of extra gear. And Stephanie says, asking families who can afford it to buy second set of winter gear to stay at your childcare, giving them a list of best quality gear. For families who don't have access, asking on a buy nothing page. Getting extra gear as children grow out of it, or finding it at thrift stores or secondhand children's clothing sale. Have a center supply. And Clara says, very good idea. Dollar Tree hats and gloves. Angela says, I usually go to the Goodwill and purchase, wash, and provide. So a lot of love for thrift stores, for Goodwill. My mind always goes to garage sales where you can get things for, say, a quarter or a dime. And also those buy nothing pages. Did I interrupt someone? Mary Jo says, create your own stash of winter items for all ages. Oh, Stephanie says, secondhand wool socks work wonderfully to cut the toes off and use as mitten protectors on children's arms. Helps keep the warmth in over less warm gloves or mittens. Great ideas. Thank you, Laura, for directing my attention to that in the chat. Shelly says, can maybe ask the county/schools if they have extras after they do a donation drive, if they have something like that in the area. So looking to your community. Great ideas. And again, continue those conversations in the chat. And we're going to move forward. Big disclaimer before we move forward about the length of time it takes to get outside is that it will probably still take a long time to get outside. But using some of these strategies that we've talked about today is going to help it feel calmer for the children and for you too. So thinking about those songs that you can use that work so beautifully, tie it with those visuals and recruiting older children. And as Laura said too, it's not up here, but you can be strategic with at what time are you helping which children. Start with the ones who maybe need more assistance and stagger it that way. Anything else you wanted to add, Laura?
I'm going to add just one more thing, which is that it is super hard for children who are ready to just sit and wait. And sometimes that's where it starts to feel chaotic. And so
Mhm.
thinking about things that children who are finished can do, can engage in while they're waiting feels really important to keep it a pleasant experience for everyone.
Thank
And
you,
I,
Laura.
yeah, and I think Shelley's idea about having children work to help one another is one of those ideas. Absolutely, Shelley.
Oh, I am so sorry. I had not had the Spanish one up there. So now we are going to hear from Valerie again. I asked her this question: what do your children love doing outdoors in winter?
Right now, this group of children I have, over the winter, we read the book. I believe it's The Snowy Day. And actually, at Kohl's, I got the care book. And then we had the character, Peter, who's in his red snowsuit. He goes outside and the kids really love making footprints and tracks and seeing what other tracks they see in the wintertime, whether it be a bird or our cat or our dog prints that are outside, and chipmunks and squirrels in the snow. So with the Peter book, he goes outside and he finds a stick and he knocks the snow off the trees. So that was something our kids did over the winter. They always wanted to have a stick, and they'd go and they'd hit everything to get the snow off the fence or to get the snow off of the chair or the playground equipment. So Peter, who we have, he's actually in a car seat at the daycare center, or he gets left in the stroller because he has to be taken care of too. So Peter has become our winter friend who is still here in the summer. So just our kids, as I said, the kids really like making tracks and they like to discover things, but also making snowman is a big hit for them. They like to do Elsa and Anna and just have a good time. One thing I personally like in the wintertime is laying down and making a snow angel and looking at the sky. So that's another fun thing they like to do.
We are going to talk more about this later, and we're going to hear from Alexis soon too about tying the indoor nature learning to the outdoor environment and outdoor play. So, as you heard, the children got excited about the snow and playing outdoors in winter from a book, and then having Peter available and in plush form to care for. So that's one way, another way that we're going to get to later on. Um, Thinking about how to excite children, get them excited to go outside, motivate them for the children who say it might feel harder to get all of that winter gear on, motivate them to get outside. So preschoolers are ultimately going to have more capacity and more of that dexterity. They're still going to be focused on that whole body movement, but now they're going to be able to, more so than infants and toddlers, to experiment, to create, to build, to go on scavenger hunts, to paint, to do, say, complex obstacle courses that they create themselves, to play with small, natural, loose parts. So go out now, start collecting those leaves, those sticks, the grass clippings that you may have, rocks and acorns. Collect those before there's snow on the ground, and then you can have those available to children to engage with while they are outside. Just put it in a bucket, in a bin, store it, and then in the winter have it out. And these are free and sustainable materials. Another point on here that I wanted to touch on too is that nature education piece. So you might have to start learning about the animals that stay through the winter and that you could potentially see in your backyard. You could learn what they like to eat, help feed them, create homes for them. You can do experiments like leaving a tray full of water outside overnight. Get children really excited about going outside and seeing what happens. Saying those statements like, I wonder what would happen if we did this. Or what do you think we could do with this? So asking those open-ended questions. So many things can be done with natural loose parts, and you could draw letters and numbers. You could paint the snow. Again, Alexis is going to get to this. But this is the time where those preschoolers, you could help, you could do those long-term experiments, those long-term projects outdoors in winter while learning about the animals and the nature that is around you.
It's interesting that you have all these ideas, Grace, because when I am outside with children in the winter, I rarely bring out anything at all. And I don't usually have things set up because the landscape has been so changed, and especially when there's snow, that it feels like um, most of our focus is on what has happened to their world and just like really exploring that more deeply, like engaging with the snow. Um, we never removed ice from my playground. That was one of those areas that they could experiment in. So engaging with ice, seeing what actually has falls from the tree that's now so easy to find because it's on this snow and things like that. So there's so much that you can do that feels so special in the winter and that doesn't have to involve a lot of stuff. I will say the one activity that we did pretty consistently though was colored water in the snow, and painting with colored water.
It's like magic.
Mhm.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
And you might be listening to these ideas too and say, I don't want to bring a lot of things outside. We don't need a lot of things outside. We can wonder about our world and the changes that have been made. So it really just depends on the children in front of you in your program and you as an educator, how you want to help support children outside. So thank you, Laura. And I see some more chat messages coming through. So I just want to again direct people to the chat to read through some of those. I do see some ideas being put in there about using, say, bringing the snow inside in a sensory bin. We will be getting to some of those ideas. I do love, Brianna says, use the natural materials to make an ice sun catcher. That is a fun one.
One of the things that I'm thinking about with what Stephanie wrote about sand toys, we always left our sand toys in the sandbox, and so then it was like a treasure hunt to get to those. And so that was always fun when, when they could dig down and suddenly woo, they've got this little shovel or pail or something like that to find.
I'm just sitting here reading Shelley's comment. Another simple add-on is to bring out ice cubes or more complex, say, freeze water in balloons and pop them to have big balls. Yeah, a lot of experimentation and just wondering about the world because winter really is a magical time. It's my favorite season. And I see Anna Bertha says, my challenge is when the children are all happy outside in winter, but there is one who takes to crying and crying, and that is when I don't know what to do, especially when the neighbors can hear what's going on. So, anyone have suggestions for Anna Bertha?
I feel like everybody should raise their hand who has had that situation happen multiple times. Um, because Anna Bertha, you're not alone. Um, I'd say almost always there is going to be one or two children who don't acclimate as quickly to being outside or sometimes at all, which doesn't stop you from going outside, but does make it a lot more complicated. Um, so yeah, so what do folks do? Because I'm going to guess it happens to all of us. So what do you do?
I can share, Laura.
Yeah.
I really liked those little wading pools, like the $7 ones from Walmart, um, for a lot of different reasons in winter. But one of them is if you have a kiddo that just doesn't feel like they ever get warm enough, putting blankets in that and making it like a cozy nest for them can sometimes help to soothe them. Um, and another idea is we had like a platform swing on our swing set that a child could lay down on. And sometimes they just wanted to lay down on that and get all curled up in a blanket and just swing. So just like things to soothe your nervous system or feel cozy out there.
I want a blanket. The thought
Yeah.
of that seems so cozy.
I'm looking at Mary Jo's response, and I think that how we respond to children can can sometimes make a difference in whether that child is having trouble for the first couple weeks or for all winter. And so, being there, acknowledging with that child that yes, it is cold, it feels different, it feels uncomfortable. Maybe putting your gloves back on will help. Um, are all, ways that can help them to sort of acclimate and feel safe while they're figuring out this new world that they have to go out into every day.
Hi there, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, I think one thing I've noticed with myself is that I have to be willing to let them get down and dirty. Like often when they're in the snow, in the rain, or any inclement weather, it's okay for them to jump in the mud and explore. And like somebody was saying, leave the ice open. They can dig through, they can touch, they can see the different stages of snow and water. I think as educators and especially teachers, we're just stay clean. Don't do that. Let's, don't touch. So as long as we're willing to let the kids explore and do what they need to do, even if it's a hands and knees and doing whatever, and be okay with that. I think that really goes a long way towards making the children acclimate to any weather too.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think about, as you were speaking, just children's need for autonomy and to have their own independence and to feel like they're in control. So one idea might be if you have that one child who just cries and cries and cries, because there's always one, as I think it was Susan who said, there's always one, at least one, that does that. Asking them beforehand, let's make a plan. What do you need? What can I do to help support you when we get outside? To offer that control of having their own needs met. So maybe they might say, I want a blanket. And that might help for a little bit. And then they might want to try something else. So that's just another idea, is talking to the child beforehand, before you get outside, asking them if they are able. And oftentimes they might not be able to respond because it might be a young toddler that is always crying outside, but offering them choices maybe instead, like what can I get you to help you? I see more ideas coming through in the chat. So I want to direct your attention there. Suggest to listen to the birds. And what a great transition into our next challenge that everyone is probably felt and said aloud at one point. The children are just too cold. As we've been talking about, it can take a long time for children to just get used to being outdoors in winter. And there are ways that you can help support them. All of the ways that we have been talking about so far. So using that proper winter gear, which we've already covered, which is fantastic. And then teaching them those keeping warm skills. So we don't want children to be so cold that it is distracting and overwhelming. So they're not going to be able to do all of the magical things that we just talked about before. So have that stockpile. Think about the waterproof, water resistance, children's gloves, all of those things that we've already been talking about, and reminding them to keep moving or to get more layers on. Like we talked about the blanket den, having a cozy area for them to take a break. So teaching those keeping warm skills. So before we move on, any other challenges that we have yet to cover that you want to talk about?
We have one that's in the chat.
Okay.
That is also a pretty common situation. So the question is, if a child has respiratory problems, and according to the license, I understand that they still need to go outside to play, but if the child gets sick, they're going to go to the hospital for respiratory problems, but you always have to take them outside. So what do you do? And I think this is a great time just to address the idea of, does going outside in the cold make you sick? So, and what I'll share is my understanding of it is that going outside when you're properly dressed does not actually generally make a person get sick. And sometimes it actually is a healthier environment because you're not going to have germs outside that children are going to be inhaling as they would in an indoor environment that's close. So that's my first response to that. And I will also say that there are children who have very specific medical needs. And so if that is a very specific medical need, it's really important to find out from the doctor, from the parents, to find out from the doctor exactly what that requirement is, because most of the time it is an interpretation that going outside is unhealthy rather than actually the reality of it.
It is a myth, Laura. You'll catch a cold if you go outside. And there is a kernel of truth to it. If you're, like Laura said, if you're not properly dressed and your body temperature drops and your body becomes stressed, you might be at a more vulnerable state to, say, catch a cold from someone or to get sick. So there's a little kernel of truth in there. The part I think where the misunderstanding comes from is that you are much more likely to catch a respiratory illness or any type of illness when you are indoors in a closed space sharing recycled air with others rather than being outdoors. As we all learned from living through the COVID pandemic, you are much less likely to catch illnesses when you are outside, but it is still important to make sure that you are keeping your body warm. And we already talked about earlier too that being outdoors, people who spend more outdoors have healthier immune systems. So getting outside, you are helping protect children, strengthen that immune system because they are exposed to so many different types of microorganisms that their body is taking in and interpreting as safe, and they're going to be able to detect the illnesses, the viruses, or the bacteria that is not so good for their body at an easier time if they do become exposed to something. Anything I missed, Laura, that you wanted to add on or clarify?
I think that Mary Jo has a good thing I want to lift up in the chat, and with social also wrote down, which is that this is information that you also, if possible, want to address up front with families. If you are a licensed or certified program, you are required to go outside with children. And so making sure that families understand that is important for you, making sure that you're doing what you're responsible for doing as a regulated program as well, which is, we're talking about what's fun about being outside and why being outside is healthy and important. And there's the rules too. And so you don't want to forget about your requirement to go outside every day.
Thank you, Laura. And to round out, we're going to hear from Alexis momentarily about what feels challenging for her in winter. What ideas that we have covered so far are you thinking, I want to try that, or that inspires me? Anything just to round out this supporting children outdoors, please put them in the chat. Using songs to get dressed, have the older kids zip up the younger kids. Gathering materials now. Great. So I'm seeing so many chat messages. Thank you all for your participation. I would encourage each of you to go and read through all of these. I am happy to hear that most of you have caught something that inspires you and you want to try out getting children outside more. And hopefully, if you didn't have so already, you have some of the language that you can use about the unique benefits of spending time outdoors, even in winter, that you can share with your families. Now we're going to hear from Alexis. I asked Alexis this question, what feels challenging in winter? And this was her response.
In the winter, it's more challenging to get out because of the different age ranges. So if you have an infant, then they only can go out in certain temperatures, and if you have older kids, they can go out in certain temperatures. So it's hard to kind of get both age groups out like at the same time, exploring to winter, and for also to be safe for those age groups as well.
And I know, Alexis, you are here, so please feel free to add on, either unmuting or through the chat if you want to add on other thoughts you might have or to clarify.
I'll also share, I know the question was about what are those temperatures? And I don't remember those temperatures at the moment. Oh, thanks, Social.
Yeah,
Social
I
just
believe
popped it in
it's
the chat.
you can fact check me then. Great. It's 20, wind chill 20 or below for infants, unsafe to go outside, and 0 or below wind chill degrees Fahrenheit for preschoolers, for children older than 2. So toddlers and preschoolers. As we talked about, there are some times where it might be unsafe to go outside. You are not able to go outside because of you are operating a childcare business, and the Department of Children and Families has clearly stated that it is unsafe to go out with children under 2 for this temperature. So it might be challenging if you have mixed ages. So how can we bring nature indoors in winter? That's our second half of today's event. So hopefully there will be even more ideas to get you thinking about incorporating nature inside. So again, just to highlight, how does bringing nature indoors benefit everyone? You are going to see some similarities between the benefits of being outdoors and the benefits of bringing nature indoors. And there is a lot of evidence to support that bringing nature and natural elements inside is going to help benefit the mental health aspects of reducing stress and regulating your mood. So it's going to help lift up your spirits, reducing that stress and regulating mood, bringing nature indoors. What you don't see on this slide are those physical health benefits of improved sleep, lower blood pressure, reduced risk of chronic disease, improved immune health. So when you can, get outdoors. And when it's unsafe and when you are unable to, now we're going to talk about bringing it inside. So here's another question I have for you. How do you incorporate nature indoors currently? So this is going to be that we're gathering knowledge from all of our participants who are coming with their own experiences and perspectives. How do you currently, when you think about your indoor space, what are ways that you incorporate nature indoors? And if you don't currently do so, what feels challenging about it? So please feel free to put those answers in the chat for everyone to see if you're willing and able. Social says we listen to natural sounds for our nap time. Listening to natural sounds helps us connect with nature indoors. And Brianna says, I bring in snow in a sensory bin and use watercolor paints to change the color of the snow. I am seeing some ideas come up in the chat that we are going to be talking about already. This is great. It's fantastic that you are already doing all of these things. I hope that by having this conversation together, you might pull some some new ideas that you might want to incorporate too. I did send out beforehand in the You Are Registered email the resource guide, just a very short one-page handout, just offering some ideas for bringing nature indoors. And because this section is going to be mainly just pictures and visuals, and we're going to be talking about ideas, this handout can be helpful for those who like to see it written down. So I will ask Laura Cruz if you could please send the Bringing Nature Indoors resource in the chat for those who maybe don't have access to it right now. So we are going to go through and talk about incorporating nature through things like sensory, art, literacy, and science experiences. So we're going to start with sensory. And as we already discussed, nature enriches the senses. So we're going to talk through those 5 core sensory systems and consider how nature can be supported throughout your sensory environment. And the first being here is, what can children hear? Are there opportunities for children to listen to the sounds of nature? As Social pointed out, she plays natural sounds at nap time. So she is incorporating that throughout the day, listening to, I'm assuming, waterfalls, bird calls, the sound of wind and rain. This could also be through instruments that are designed to mimic the sounds of nature. So you can see here on the slide, there are rasp instruments, which is that frog that you take the wooden stick and you slide it over the frog and it sounds like a frog croaking. That's at the far bottom left. Ocean drums are designed to mimic the waves of the ocean. You can see that at the top left middle photo. And rain sticks, and you can make these homemade too. So again, mimicking the sounds of rainfall. So thinking about what children can hear. It can also be through incorporating, say, natural materials that make unique noises. So a lot of you talked about bringing leaves in so children can hear the crunchy leaves, or maybe making your own seed shakers. Pets are another one too. The sound of a cat meowing or a dog barking could be through, say, a homemade shell mobile. Someone mentioned in the chat too about making natural mobiles that when you run your hands through it, you can hear the shells clinking together. So could you incorporate thinking about what can children hear? And maybe if you are thinking, I don't want to maybe offer nature sounds like as background noise, could you offer maybe an independent listening area? Say having like a CD player with a headset that children could go and escape to when they needed that sensory input. So thinking about it that way, what can children hear? And again, as I'm going through these, please add things that I've missed, things that you've done that work well for you in the chat. Actually, before I go on to what children can smell, Laura, do you have anything you want to add?
No,
Okay.
that was good. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, the next question. Thinking about sensory, what can children smell? And this is an often overlooked component, at least it was for me for a very long time, thinking about the indoor environment. Can you incorporate those natural aromas for children? So I'm thinking about spices and herbs, incorporating, say, lavender or other, cinnamon, clove, other smelly natural things into, say, Play-Doh. I've seen putting cinnamon in paint to get that sensory, um, that smell working in children. There are so many opportunities to incorporate smells throughout your environment. Thinking about, say, maybe potpourri or an oil diffuser. And potpourri is something that you can heat up on your stovetop that fills the room with a sense of smell. And oil diffusers, you put a little couple drops of oil with some water, again, filling the room with smells. With those two in particular, I would caution to be mindful because some children may be sensitive to smells. So when you do have the full-blown oil diffuser in the room, some children can opt out of smelling it. So watching your children, being mindful about their own sensory preferences and checking in with them or noticing their behavior. I know for me, I had never been more surprised than I was the day I decided to just bring 2 sandwich bags to children, one with cinnamon in it and one with cloves. And the amount of time and engagement that children just were over the moon about smelling each of them and then just deciding which one was their favorite. So this is a big component that I think is often overlooked. You can see up on the top right there, the infant is exploring dill too. So there are a lot of taste safe, aromatic, natural materials that you can offer in your program.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is one of my deep pleasures to do with children is to plant things, which I already put a little bit about that in the chat. And planting herbs, which often grow very quickly, hits a lot of these different modalities, including smell. So I think that that could be added to it. I see the child playing in what looks like, I don't know, that could be parsley. It's hard to tell. But yeah, I think that that could be a really nice way to incorporate the outside inside in many ways.
Thanks, Laura. All right, this is another big one. What can children see? So when you just stand back and look at your indoor environment, what are your natural elements? Do you have natural earthy tones, colors? Do you have natural materials like wood and cotton and wool? Can you incorporate, it sounds like many of you do, incorporate those non-toxic plants for children to feel? I would just caution, don't put your favorite houseplant where children can engage with it because just don't get too attached to those houseplants. And we'll talk about it a little bit later too and I'm sure Laura will have thoughts of great plants to grow indoors with children to incorporate that nature exploration, that science element. You can regrow foods from kitchen scraps, putting them in a water bath by the windowsill. You can put elements in your space that mimic the beauty of nature. I see in Trisha's program up on the top left middle, you can see she has recreated a tree. Adding those sun catchers to your window made of leaves that you found in your outdoor space that the children helped collect. So incorporating animals. I see Kathy and Linda have incorporated eye-level fish tanks throughout their environment. And a big one too is enticing nature and animals to come near your windows so you can see them when you're indoors. And if you do not, say, want to invest in a window bird feeder, like on the bottom left far corner there, you may just want to try out scattering some birdseed outside near your window and see what it attracts. And finally, another way, before I turn it over to Laura to see if she has any other thoughts she wants to add, is taking photos of children outdoors and then displaying them in your indoor environment. Just another way, thinking about that visual component of sensory development, what children can see, taking photos of children actually outside, engaged in nature, and displaying them indoors, either on the walls or, say, through photo albums.
I'll just add a quick fun story to the idea of sprinkling bird seed outside your window. I am in a really urban environment. I am right in the middle of the city. The houses are really close together. I put up a bird feeder, and some of the bird food fell to the ground, which then attracted chipmunks, and then squirrels, and then rabbits, and then woodchucks. And so when you talk about inviting nature, it was just a little bird seed, and I only did it one season because I wasn't expecting all of that. But boy, just adding a, like a small natural element could really bring about far more nature than you were expecting, maybe far more nature than you wanted.
In terms of your woodchuck,
The
right?
woodchuck, yeah, it moved in. It decided to stay.
That is a fun story. Yeah. And yeah, just scattering that bird seed. Also, too, I would just remind all of you, if you didn't already know, that there are different types of bird seed, and I would just look into either the types of birds that will be around you if you want to attract birds, and then get the correct bird seed, especially if it's going to be on the ground. There are certain types of birds that exclusively feed on the ground, so I would encourage you to get that type of bird seed. You probably would be more successful that way. Great story, Laura. I love it. And you're probably going to get squirrels, the squirrels that hang around, and chipmunks, and lots of nature. All right, what can children touch? What can they get their hands on? Do you have real nature? We already talked about, many of you do have real nature that children can touch and explore. And if you don't yet, start small. Maybe grab a bin of sticks and put them near your blocks or in your art area to just see what happens. And we've already talked about this too tonight, incorporating snow indoors in your sensory bin. One that I love that I came across is, and I have tried before, is the top right middle one. You see that child is exploring a nature sensory board. So this is just a box that the educator has hot glued natural elements on that infants and young toddlers and even preschoolers can then come and explore and touch and feel. And go out, start collecting these elements that maybe you want to try incorporating indoors before you have all the snow on the ground. And there is an abundance of natural loose parts right now in fall. And again, these are free and sustainable. Anything you want to add, Laura?
Yeah, I'll just add a fun little project. If you are able to get your hands on some gourds, or you happen to be growing them, you can put those in a sensory table with sand. And in my experience, if you're lucky, the gourds will actually dry out. And then you have them all winter long to explore, to do art with, to make into musical instruments. So it's just a fun little project that connects the children to nature all winter long.
Thank you. And now we are going to hear from Alexis. I asked her this question: how do you incorporate nature indoors? Make sure the volume's all the way up, people.
Children will get to explore like the snow, the texture of it, how it tastes. And then we will bring it like inside as a sensory bin, and they will get to explore like the snow melting and different activities. Sometimes we may do painting the snow. We started a garden last year with tomatoes and cucumbers, and it was kind of successful. So this year we started indoors last month, and we expand it. So this year we're trying watermelon, corn, kale, cucumbers, tomatoes, strawberries, basil, and rosemary. After we go outside, we come back in and the kids water the plants indoors. And when we're outside, they water those plants as well. So we're just waiting to kind of see what's going to happen with it. Is it going to be successful? And we've also been reading books about planting and gardening and things of that nature.
Laura, I'm sure you have thoughts.
I have so many thoughts. Um,
For those who don't know, Laura is a huge gardener and a
I
great gardener.
I am, and I think that you can easily find an activity book on experiments with gardening inside with children. And there's something I think really cathartic about bringing soil inside and having your hands in soil in the winter. And I haven't actually looked up the science behind it yet, but I was told by a reliable source that there is something in the microbes in the soil, and Stephanie might be able to give more information about that, that is actually really beneficial. Stephanie, do you know any of the details about that?
I don't know the microbe name, but yeah, they have found that it is one that when it gets so when people wear like gardening gloves, it doesn't get into your system. So that's important to have your hands bare when you're working in soil. But the microbes get into your system and actually activate the what's word am I looking for? The hormone in your brain that like makes you happy. Um, so yeah, makes you happier.
So that explains why it makes me happier, because it really does make me
Yeah.
happier.
Yeah.
And so some of the different experiments that I like to do with young children include just, first of all, just exploring the soil. Because when you start to really look at soil, there's so much more in it than dirt. And sometimes there isn't even any dirt. And so that could be really exciting. Like what Stephanie's saying, changing it, adding water, seeing what happens. You could do a lot of experimenting just with the soil. And then to what Grace was saying about what to plant inside in the winter, I always gravitate towards things that are edible because it just takes all the anxiety out of it. And so I usually get a wide variety of seeds because I'm a seed hoarder. And so I'll have all these different kinds. And then depending on the age of the child, like the very small children, your toddlers, are going to need to have the bigger seeds to be able to pick them up and to move them around. So things like pumpkins and cucumbers, which also are really fast growing starters. They're not going to really grow into anything inside, but it's really fun to watch these plants sprout up really big and really fast. Beans and peas as well, super fast. A fun experiment that I do almost every year when I've got kids is to put beans and peas in a paper towel, get it wet, put it in a Ziploc bag, and just tape it to a window. And what you start to see is the root systems come out. And then because it's totally non-toxic, it's not going to hurt the kids to later rip it apart and explore what's going on with it. So just a couple of ideas. I can go on all night, so I'm going to stop now.
And thank you, Laura. And Brianna says, what if you are not a green thumb? And Stephanie put, just play in the mud then.
Yeah. So, and all the ideas I have do not require green thumb because you can usually get a plant started and then it's just going to die when you don't take care of it the right way. But
But
that's
it's the
okay.
process.
It's it's about the process, and the majority of the things, everything that I just named, isn't going to grow to actually develop its vegetable in your house because it needs full natural light. But you get to watch the leaves unfold and the roots grow and to just explore the process. And then the kids, your toddlers, you plant enough of them so they can really rip it apart, and it's okay. It's not a big deal to explore it fully.
There's a photo that we'll get to on our page where we're talking about science of just putting nature flowers. I think Kathy has flowers in her sensory bin, or really anything, just letting children rip it apart. And what a great learning experience that if you take a plant that you've helped to grow and you rip it apart, you can't put it back together. So shifting gears a little bit, thank you, Laura, for your expert gardening knowledge. Nature can be incorporated in art experiences. So using those natural materials to create with, such as like paintbrushes, or using them as tools to engage in open-ended process art. So you can make your own paintbrushes that then become tools for dabbing, uh, brushing and gluing. You can make collages with all those natural materials that you are all going to go out and gather as soon as we're done and tomorrow is a new day and you're outside and gathering up all of those free and sustainable natural materials. You can crush up leaves and put it into paint or glue. Again, these are free and sustainable. They're going to come back next year. And it can also include what you create on. So just another way of thinking about nature and incorporating it through art are doing things like painting rocks or bringing in branches using chalk. This is a great way to get really young children to just use those fingers. Just having logs out and branches or even just sticks, giving them a big piece of chalk to explore and cover it all. There's so many possibilities. I know here on the sides we see some sculptures being created with, say, flowers or pine cones. And again, this is just having it available for children and giving them the freedom to create with these materials and to feel them and to explore with them, to break them up and to do all of the things and create all of these beautiful pieces of art. I love the one on the top far right. Those are acorn tops that you use glue and you pour it in the acorn top and you let children pour the glue and then you give them some watercolor paint to mix in there. And you let these set out for a week and they become little itty bitty treasure troves that you then could use as a material in your space. So again, so many opportunities. These are just a few. If you have others, please put them in the chat. Leaf rubbing. Yes, thank you, Social. So putting the leaf underneath a piece of paper, using crayons to rub on it and see that beautiful leaf image show up. I would love some more ideas for infants or art. Great question, Brianna. I'm going to open that up. More infant safe art experiences that include nature.
One of the things I was thinking about, Brianna, as Grace is going through this slide, is that um, this looks very neat and organized in each of these pictures. And I think that if you don't give children a specific task to do, some might end up painting the stick, and others might use the stick to paint with. And so thinking about, like not necessarily having a goal in mind, but providing safe materials and letting them explore um, however they want to. And then you're just there to ensure that it continues to be safe.
Thank you, Laura. Any others? painting with sticks, painting rocks. And I want to make sure I reiterate what Laura had said too. Just offering nature in your art area is an invitation to spark imagination and creativity with young children, and not necessarily this is what we're doing today, this is our activity. You can maybe do a mix of both, but really just providing those open-ended materials for children to then, based on their own ideas and their own preferences, use their creativity and their imagination to create. Paint with ice cubes. That is a fun one, Jennifer. Stephanie says, I was thinking about how a lot of the flowers are edible. So lavender, dandelions, violets, clovers. Adding those to taste safe Play-Doh for infants would work with infants through preschoolers. Deb says also adding those edible flowers in the kitchen area.
So I love that idea, and I just want to put a word of caution that children aren't going to know the difference between the flowers they can and can't eat. And so if you're going to do that, you're going to want to make sure that there's an educational component to what you're doing, so that when they go out in the spring, they don't necessarily start munching on your bushes, because you just don't know if those are going to be toxic or non-toxic plants.
Good disclaimer.
Yeah.
All right. If you are still typing in the chat, please continue to do so and send those ideas. And now we're going to talk about literacy and literary experiences, using literature to tell stories about winter, to excite children's imagination about winter. And so thinking about books that incorporate, things, thinking about hibernation and weather, animals, winter recreation, and just making sure that the literature that you put on your bookshelf is representative of the children and the families and the cultures in your program and your broader community, and also that it is relevant to children's real life experiences. So here are just a few examples. And the snowy day is representing here on the top left. That is what Valerie was speaking to earlier. She has a little Peter plush that her children take care of all year round. So again, these are just a few nonfiction books that maybe weren't originally written for children, are also a great way to add in real images of nature in literary form on your bookshelf in your indoor space. I want to know, and we all want to know, what are your favorite books about nature that are not represented here? Please put those in the chat. Anything to add, Laura, while folks are thinking about that question?
I'm trying to remember the name of the story with the kid who gets all dressed up. His mom and his dad and his grandparents get him all dressed up to go outside to play. And then as soon as he walks outside, and it takes like 20 minutes, it's half the story. And then he says, "Oh, I got to go." And then they have to take him back in to go to the bathroom and take everything off. If anybody remembers the name of that book, it's one of my favorites.
I'm going to have to write that down and make sure
Yeah.
I get that to put on that list that I send
It
out
might be
later
called
on.
"I've Got to Go."
Okay.
Not sure.
I see Stephanie is putting some images of books waiting for winter, snowballs. Mary Jo says time to sleep. I do a story basket with this book. The Froggy books are kind of like that, says Michelle. Deb says Little Owl's Day and Little Owl's Night. Geneva, the big red sled. Sneezy the snowman. Thank you all for all of those thoughts. We're gonna keep adding them. We're gonna move on because we are almost to the end of our time together. We're gonna end talking about science. You can't talk about nature-based education without talking about science. So science is just the exploration of life and how the world works. And we've already been talking about these pieces. So throughout our entire event, incorporating science, thinking about science outdoors and then also indoors. So offering tools like magnifying glasses, water, even pencils and notebooks for toddlers will even use those to write notes and make hypotheses. So and using those realistic representations of nature through books or photos or having the real thing in your indoor environment. And you can do things like exploring temperature with children. So what happens when you freeze something and then you leave it out inside overnight? Or just talking and exploring the seasons and weather and giving them the language to describe it. So look, it's frozen. It's solid. Oh, it's melting. It's turning into liquid. And again, all ages, children of all ages can and should hear this type of scientific descriptive language about our world. So again, we've already touched on this, learning about the animals that either hibernate or migrate, talking about those, exploring those with children, the possibilities for science, and to put it all in one slide is very challenging. It is endless, but thinking about it from a science perspective. Anything to add, Laura? We've already covered it in gardening too.
I'll let it sit because I see what time it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Here is, I also sent this out. This is just if you're the type of person who likes to write things down. This is a way that here are some questions to get you thinking about nature in your indoor space. If this works for you, feel free to use it. I will ask Laura Cruz to please send this in the chat. It was also included in the email I had sent out to you. And now we're going to end by hearing from Valerie and how she incorporates nature indoors.
Every day there's nature. For example, when the kids come in the door, sometimes there might be a bug that comes in. So we have made houses for the bugs. We talk about the bugs, bringing things in from our outside play area and doing vice versa, taking things out to our outside play area. Last week I just had the kids, I have an outdoor shed that I store all my winter over the winter, I store all of my play area stuff for outside. So last week we made a day of it and we took my shelves out. So I have blocks, pine cones. Our sandbox is full of rocks. The kids do collections, so bringing them indoors during the fall or even in the summer, or taking things outside. We have sticks inside. We have pine cones from our trees. We have walnuts, which a lot of times are called coconuts. So we bring those things in from outside. The other day we were outside and there was, the kids helped me actually weed because we have 4 garden beds and then I have my flower beds in the area where they play, and we found a toad. So we made a toad house and they seen the toad was hiding in the grass being camouflaged. So the little girl wanted to build more inside, so she took some home so she could find some toads at her house and have houses for them. So just incorporating what the kids find, whether it's a leaf, it's a piece of bark, The kids really enjoy coloring outside, doing art outside. So just basically having an outdoor classroom outside and inside.
And thank you again. Thank you, Laura, and thank you to Alexis and Valerie.
Well, I want to express thank you also to everyone for such participation and for letting me talk about what I love outside in the winter, because one of my favorite subjects. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you for spending it with us.